Good morning. Hey, welcome to Morning Jen. We are doing this live, second day in a row, so bear with me if I have any technical issues. It's so great to be here with you guys. So, let me tell you what is at the very top of our news. You know it. Kamala Harris, in less than 24 hours after 24 hours after Joe Biden endorsed her and stepped out of the race, she has secured enough delegates to basically ensure that she is the Democratic nominee for the U.S. presidency. I want us to take a look at that delegate count because, why don't we get into the weeds a little bit about this? Okay, so take a look at this chart. It shows you what everyone's been talking about. If you look at the blue line above, represents all of the delegates from the states who have decided to back Harris. Previously, they were backing Biden Harris. We have a very slim number of undecided, and these were the others that were not reached in this survey that was done by the AP. Published by the Washington Post. Now, these are folks who have been on the telephone with Kamala Harris or who have in their state groupings held Zoom meetings and voted to pledge their delegates. Now, you may not know exactly what folks are talking about when they talk about delegates. And so let me remove that for a moment and tell you what this is all about. As you know, if you voted in the Democratic primary, right, or even in the Republican primary, and your state went for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden as the ticket, right? Every state has a number of delegates in proportion to the population. It's kind of like the way the Electoral College works, but this is decided by the party. So the Democratic Party has a certain number of total delegates, and I'm going to put this back up here. It gets a little more complicated, but the idea is, you can see this line, 1976. In order to win the nomination at the convention in Chicago, and this was the case even when Biden was in the race, you need to get to secure at least 1,976 delegates out of the total 2,688. And again, I'm keeping this simple. Again, all these delegates, the 2,688, represent all the states that voted. So I voted in Massachusetts. Now I'm a Michigan resident, and the question is whether when Massachusetts went to Biden Harris, the expectation was, again, even before Biden dropped out of the race, then when you got to Chicago and literally voted there, I mean, the delegates fly to the convention and they stand on the floor and they vote. And again, simplifying it, but the idea is you are obligated if you're in a state that says you're locked in, and that is most states, you are locked into you're locked into the candidate that you are supposed to represent. You are a delegate. If you're the Massachusetts delegation, you're going there to vote for Biden Harris, similar to California and so on. So again, only thing that changed here is that when Joe Biden stepped out of the race, now the ticket was only Kamala Harris. And that's different than, even though she was on it before, she still needed to know if she wanted to secure the nomination, that when it came to Chicago, she would have at least 1,976. That's the majority of delegates. Again, simplifying this. Okay. And so the deal is, that is now secure. Okay, what we are talking about is a sea change. On Sunday, a little before 2 p.m., right? This is the timeline. Joe Biden announces that he is not going to seek re-election, that he's standing down, he is dropping out of the race. And then 15 minutes later, he endorsed Kamala Harris, right? Within less than 30 hours. So again, a day and a quarter, Kamala Harris has managed to do something no one has ever done before, which is to do this, to unite the Democratic Party, right? We are notoriously always the Democrats in disarray. We are in array. We are lined up because we are doing exactly what was done in France. We are creating a coalition of people a coalition who's going to stand behind the Democratic nominee and work together to defeat Trump and also to put our agenda forward. And so I want to share this with you. Kamala Harris was, or I should say, Vice President Harris was absolutely clear that this is not a coronation. She knew she had to win the votes of the delegates. I'm going to play this for you so you can see what she said yesterday before she had this locked.
And it is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
Okay, that was from, and I'll talk about this in a moment, that was from yesterday when she made her very first appearance at campaign headquarters. It used to be Biden-Harris headquarters, now is Harris headquarters. She said that because there are some allegations that somehow this is undemocratic, that this is not an open process. It absolutely has been and will be an open process. The idea here, again, it's always been the case that the delegates are supposed to vote for the candidates we voted for in the primary. In this case, Joe Biden stepped out of the race. I've always believed now that means Harris stepped up, and I believe the delegates should commit to her. But they had a choice, right? Anybody could have stepped in the ring. Anybody. There were a lot of people on folks' shortlist. I know that when there was a discussion, what if Joe Biden steps down, or what if he needs to leave for health reasons, or what if he succumbs to the pressure from the Democratic Party, leaders who are concerned about the polling. We talked about that here, right? What happens next? And everybody was freaked out, like it's going to be a food fight. It's going to be a fight on the floor of the convention, like happened in 1968. And when I was just a tiny baby, so I don't remember, but I've heard about it, right? We've seen movies about it. We know what chaos looks like in the primaries. We know what happens when we turn against each other, right? So people were afraid of that. And yet, that is not at all what happened. A lot of people had their favorite candidates, and I've heard a lot of names thrown around, and they're lovely, great people. My governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Lovely, smart, great person. Other people think, I like Gavin Newsom. Some people say, these are all fantastic people. But guess what? None of them are running. Every single one of them, after Joe Biden stepped out of the race, said they weren't going to do it. They don't want to. They don't want to create chaos. They know that Kamala Harris is up for the job. She's the right person. She was supported by the voters in the primary. And they also know that all of us are stronger together than we are divided up. And I got to tell you, it's going to be absolutely, absolutely incredible. And you know how we know this? You know how we know that this is a huge success? It is. It is because there is a complete MAGA meltdown. Okay, and I am going to share that with you right now, and then we're going to return to the timeline. What actually happened that allowed Kamala Harris to shore up the support of all the delegates and, in fact, the general public. We're going to talk about that in a second, but I really need to take a quick detour for the MAGA meltdown because I cannot get enough of this. Now, I'm about to play you a clip of, this is just, I'm even laughing thinking about it. I'm about to play you a clip of Donald Trump's longtime advisor, Stephen Miller. And yes, Stephen Miller is someone I actually did meet when I was in Atlanta. He was in the spin room, and he is just as imperious and self-assured as you would expect. And his ideas on immigration are very scary. And he is someone who I don't see as having compassion for other human beings. That's my perspective. So when I see him freak out, it brings me Schadenfreude, or as the German word for joy in the suffering of your enemies. That's a terrible thing to say. I should say maybe he's not my enemy, but it's people who you detest. Okay, so I'm going to play this for you. It is from Sunday night, right? So this is right when he found out that not only was Biden stepping aside, but he was endorsing Harris. Let's play this.
Primary. People, they had ballots. They filled out circles. They went to the voting booths. They spent money on advertisements. And as President Trump said, The Republican Party spent tens of millions of dollars running against Joe Biden. Now they just woke up one morning and said, never mind, we're canceling the entire primary. We're getting rid of our candidate, and we're pretending the election has never even happened, and we're going to let donors handpick a new nominee. They're public.
I'm going to have to play that for you again in a second, but it is, I just love it, okay? I can translate what just happened, right? We can talk about that, but just the emotional freak out, the fact that he is also, so he's not even like cleanly shaven. He's just freaking out, going on television, venting his fears and his anger. Obviously, also a mouthpiece for his dear leader, Donald Trump. And what is going on here? Why Stephen Miller is like unhinged, completely melting down with MAGA is because they just did not anticipate that the Democrats could have had their act together. And they really, really, really wanted to campaign against Joe Biden. They had built their entire strategy on tearing him down. And they have nothing to do that they can say that would tear down Kamala Harris. And let me just play that for you one more time because it's just it's so visceral. There's so many things to unpack. Let's do this.
Primary. People, they had ballots. They filled out circles. They went to the voting booths. They spent money on advertisements. And as President Trump said, the Republican Party spent tens of millions of dollars running against Joe Biden. Now they just woke up one morning and said, never mind, we're canceling the entire primary. We're getting rid of our candidate, and we're pretending the election has never even happened, and we're going to let donors handpick a new nominee.
Okay, couple things there. First, donors did not handpick a new nominee. That is not what happened. The new nominee is Kamala Harris, who was on the ticket before. By the way, for the record, I did not fill out a circle in my primary. I don't know what you did. Where I voted, you connect a line, but maybe some people filled out circles. And I voted for Biden Harris, and I fully understood that if something happened to the president, that's why we have a vice president. And I knew of Joe Biden's age when I voted for him back in 2020, and I was thrilled with the possibility that if he did not want to serve another term, he talked about he was going to be a transitional president. I knew that Harris was likely to be the next nominee. So we know this. We voted for Biden Harris. There are no donors who selected her. That is not what happened. And because if you actually look at some of the names being put forward, that were being put forward by some of the folks in the donor class, like, oh, we're going to handpick this person. None of that happened, right? Harris was able to gain the support of the grassroots, of the delegates, of the punditry. And, there's no kind of crying on television and no kind of, garment rending and no kind of, throwing ketchup at the wall that is going to change reality. And that's all that they know how to do right now. And as I played before, Kamala Harris understood that she had to win this nomination. So let me run down that timeline before I show you a few more clips. Okay, so as you know, by Monday night, by 9 p.m. Eastern, and this is around 30 hours after Joe Biden stepped aside, Kamala Harris had sewed up the nomination by surpassing the 1,976. That was a magic number of delegates representing our votes from all the states. That's what she was able to do. And so how did she get here? Let's talk about the timeline, and then we'll talk about what probably went on behind the scenes. Okay, so just on Sunday, just before 2 p.m., Joe Biden put out a letter via Twitter saying that he was going to step down. And in that, he did praise Harris, but did not say anything about who he was going to endorse. That left us for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, everyone kind of in a state of shock, feeling numb and wondering what was going to happen next. And there were a lot of folks who were saying, aha, now the food fight begins, now utter chaos. But instead, around 2:15, Joe Biden put out that beautiful tweet that I shared with you yesterday with a picture of them walking by the Rose Garden. And in that, he endorsed Kamala Harris. And this was, this is so great. Immediately with that endorsement, which is something else that was going to happen anyway, we had the campaign, was officially renamed with the Federal Election Commission with a filing. And then Harris made plans to go, again, this all happening yesterday, right? Harris makes plans, announces that she is going to, at 6 p.m., this is just, I'm sorry, I'm getting to Monday. So as you know, I'm getting to Harris was, endorsed. Her campaign is renamed. Let me still stay on Sunday. And the key things that have to happen, and it's something Nancy Pelosi said, it's the 3 M's, right? You need to have all 3 of these, right? You need mobilization, you need the message, and you need the money. And she touched all these bases beautifully, right? And you may feel like, oh, this is really crass for me to act as if money is an indicator of support. But first of all, it's not just to pay everybody and to pay for the advertisements. But we know the Supreme Court has said this, and it goes back to Bulkley versus Vallejo. This is in the 1970s, well before Citizens United. It was the Supreme Court who said that money in politics is speech, and everyone really spoke with their pocketbooks. And let me tell you how that began. Again, so now we are now moving to still this was happening on Sunday. Okay, so this is like we have. I just want to do the timeline again. Biden, right before 2 p.m. on Sunday, he steps down, and then 2:15 he endorses Harris, and then the campaign is officially renamed, and she is able to accept funds in her own name. It's still the campaign account. Okay, so that day on Sunday was a huge fundraising haul, right? We had the mobilization, we had her message, and we had the money. And the most important thing that I saw happen that day that kind of merged together, the mobilization, the message, and the money, was this incredible call organized by the group Win with Black Women. And it was 44,000 Black women joined a Zoom call. Right? It wasn't the plan to have that many. That is how many of my friends, it might have been you, maybe you were on the call as well. My friends, maybe you're watching and you were there. And this was an incredible event. And this call resulted in, it was a 3-hour Zoom call, resulted in raising $1.5 million in 3 hours. That was 44,000 Black women on this Zoom call were able to do that. That was a sign of mobilization. That was a sign that, people had Harris's back, and then, that happened. And by the end of the day of Sunday, we knew how much money was flowing in, right? It was more than $50 million for Harris. Plus there was, another, we knew there was another maybe 200 million that had come in through a political action committee, through a super PAC for the campaign that was then released. Okay, that was all on Sunday. On Monday, the mobilization, the message, and the money continued. We had a group of 20,000 Black men on a Zoom call organized by Roland Martin. And this call included folks like Bakari Sellers, who is committed to Harris for a number of reasons, but including because he feels an affinity for her, because when one of his children was suffering with I think it was like a liver disease, and he was so worried about her health, what she did is she actually called him and reached out to him. And this was like hugely important for him, and he's never forgot. And so the money kept flowing in on Monday. Okay, let's talk about, though, not just the money, but the character of this money. By the end of Monday, right? So now we're talking about 2 days worth of fundraising. $88 million was raised from grassroots donors. And of them, 60% of these donors, and if you do the math, if I do it quickly, it's like 50 million of them had never before donated to this campaign. That is huge mobilization. That shows incredible energy and interest. In addition, in terms of mobilization, there was a volunteer sign-up surge. 30,000 people, it is reported, signed up to join the Harris for President campaign by yesterday evening. We also, another indicator of this, besides the money and the volunteers, is that when Kamala Harris went to the headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, which is now her headquarters for her presidential campaign, instead of the Biden-Harris headquarters, right? It's the Harris headquarters at the moment. She live streamed her meeting with the staff who were there. And Joe Biden did call in, which was very, very sweet. But in kind of more verbally, instead of just in these press releases, not just in text, pass the torch, which was incredible. But at this meeting, if you want to watch it, I mean, you can watch it in various locations. You can find it on YouTube. But if you just look at the Twitter feed for the Harris campaign, you can see that more than 1.1 million people viewed the video feed, which is incredible. I mean, who wants to attend a campaign event? It's showing all of the energy. And let me just add one more thing, again, about the process. And what I'm talking about now is the timeline that brought us from Sunday at 1:40 p.m. when Joe Biden stepped down to by Monday night, like we're talking about 30 hours, like just over a day, that she was able to, by 9 p.m., secure the commitment from the delegates she needed in order to be the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. I'm going through all the things that happened, this kind of mobilization, the message, and the money. I haven't talked about the message yet. We're going to get that to it in a moment. But the last thing I want to tell you before I show you Harris and we talk about what her message is and how she can beat Donald Trump, I want to point out that MSNBC last night took a look at this with a survey, and what they note is that Kamala Harris has 94% support among Democrats, which is 5 points more than Hillary Clinton had on Election Day in 2016. This is huge because this was the first day of Harris's campaign, first of all. And second of all, we also know that Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, even if she was shy by the decisive 37,000 votes, or 77,000 votes across 3 states. This is incredibly important. The party is not divided. This bodes very well on the first day of the campaign. Okay, so let me share for you this excerpt of Harris speaking at that campaign event that began at around 6 o'clock. And this is where she is drawing a distinction between herself and Donald Trump. Let me play that for you.
You know, as many of you know, before I was elected as vice president, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his.
Okay, so I want to play that for you, but I want to add something. It's obvious that one of the big themes of the campaign is the prosecutor versus the perpetrator, right? The federal prosecutor versus the convicted felon. That is a theme. But I want to continue with what Harris said, because it's not just that's not all of who she is, right? To be a candidate for the Democratic Party, you're not just running against fascism. That doesn't inspire people. You are running for something. So let me continue with what she said before I move on to the next topic.
As a young prosecutor, when I was in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in California, I specialized in cases involving sexual abuse. Donald Trump was found liable by a jury for committing sexual abuse. As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges and put it out of business. Donald Trump ran a for-profit college, Trump University. that was forced to pay $25 million to the students it scammed. As district attorney, to go after polluters, I created one of the first environmental justice units in our nation. Donald Trump stood in Mar-a-Lago and told big oil lobbyists he would do their bidding for a $1 billion campaign contribution. During the foreclosure crisis, I took on the big Wall Street banks and won $20 billion for California families, holding those banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 counts of fraud.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so right after that, I didn't have the end of that clip. Sorry about that. But right after she said that, she said, I'm not just running against Donald Trump. I'm running for something. You know, she is moving the party forward. What Donald Trump represents is the past. Kamala Harris can finish the work that Joe Biden started and that the Democratic Party before her started. We know where she stands on abortion rights. We know where she stands on the right to divorce a spouse who is battering you or is violent or abusive. And we know exactly where Donald Trump and J.D. Vance stand on those issues. J.D. Vance does not believe in no-fault divorce. He is on tape. He is on video saying that he thinks that women should stay and men should stay in abusive marriages, even violent ones. He believes that. He also believes in a national ban on abortion. In addition, as senator in Ohio, he voted against protecting IVF. He is not in the mainstream. He wants to dial back American values. He wants to especially hurt women, and we should not ever think differently about what they are doing when it comes to Project 2025. It's laid out there. You know, even if Donald Trump says he's not supporting it, this man lies every time he moves his lips. So we know that Kamala would bring the country forward, whereas Donald Trump would bring us further backward and wants to be an autocrat, admires Xi, the head of China. As you know, the other day, Donald Trump was saying that he admires him because he rules over millions of people with an iron fist, essentially. That is what Donald Trump wants to bring to America. There will be no going back from a dictatorship like that. This is very, very serious. Okay. So now I want to move on to the fun part of the show before we get to Crazy Town, which is this. Rome was not built in a day. Kamala Harris got this done because she is following in the tradition of one of the, if not the most savvy politicians we have ever known. And that is, you know it, who I'm going to say, Nancy Pelosi. And I just want to share this shot of her, right? Nancy Pelosi is a genius when it comes to, as we know, politics, personalities, and power. She knows how to count the votes. And if you were with me on this show right around the time, I think it was the day after Joe Biden spoke at gave the press conference at the end of the NATO summit. And the following day, Nancy Pelosi had appeared. Oh, I'm sorry. Before he gave the speech at the summit, right? The day before, Nancy Pelosi had appeared on Morning Joe. And they were asking her, do you support Joe Biden's candidacy? Or do you think he should step aside? And she pivoted. She turned the conversation and said, I want Joe Biden, I want President Biden to make his own decision. And she celebrated his accomplishments. She celebrated what he had done by hosting NATO here in the U.S. and his history with foreign policy and domestic policy and helping the country move away from its dangerous past with Donald Trump. So we've all praised him, but Pelosi left that door open. I clearly heard it, and I let you know. I let you know that when she said that, she wanted Joe Biden to make his own decision. I understood that there were things going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about, despite Joe Biden's campaign saying he has no intention of stepping aside. You have to say that until you make your final decision. He was absolutely, and this was reported in the news, listening to people give him advice about polling. And I know you all don't like the public polling we see, and that makes sense. But the campaign was doing its own polling. They do internal polling through sources through polling organizations they trust, and they make sure it's statistically accurate. They do their best because they need to know how things are going. And the internal polls were really bad for Joe Biden. And that is why, and this was reported as well, he asked for internal polling to see how Harris could do. And so when he saw that Harris could win, and in fact was doing better than him in internal polling, at that point, I think Joe became more amenable to the decision. And so what I'm guessing is that one of the things that was happening behind the scenes with the guidance of someone or the just mentorship of someone like Nancy Pelosi was everybody knew that if this was going to happen, if Joe Biden was going to step down, that it could be utter chaos. And so I believe that people, modeling herself after Pelosi, I believe Kamala Harris understood that she had to count the votes and that she was going to have to sew this up quickly and get the support. So I think as soon as it was clear that Joe Biden might step down and that he might endorse her, that she was going to have to do the work. And I will say it's for this reason that I'm going to refer to both Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi in the term that British pop artist Charlie XCX called Harris, which is brat. If you don't know what this is, I'm going to show you this clip in a second, or ask your Gen Z kids. Okay, so one last thing again before I show you the brat video, and then go to Crazy Town. Kamala Harris knows what she's up against, and as Al Sharpton reported that he told her, you cannot get ready for a prize fight. This is a street fight. And according to Sharpton, Harris replied, I'm prepared for that. I have no doubt. Okay, quick thing. What is this brat situation? You really have to know this. I'm sorry, but Kamala is brat, and I'm going to show you this discussion, and you may cringe, but you will thank me later, and then we will turn to Crazy Town. Let's do this.
I want to talk about this appeal to Gen Z.
Right, which is a natural question.
Natural question for you.
I am here today just for this question. Yes,
our biggest brat.
Yeah.
So, I, for the record, I was tipped off about this, what I'm about to share with our viewers, by my 16-year-old
who truly
daughter,
is an
who
expert.
is an actual member of Gen Z. Kamala Harris appears to be leaning into this. The singer Charlie XCX tweeted last night, "Kamala is brat." And this is in reference to her album. It's called Brat. Kamala has branded her Kamala HQ Twitter page with the same aesthetic of the album. That's another Gen Z word, aesthetic. It's even becoming a trend on TikTok. Special Gen Z correspondent Jamie, what can you tell us about?
So first of all, just for my producer Elizabeth Stewart, who will spit out her coffee as I say this, I am supposed to say that's brat. And for those who are not in the know the way I am, that is a cool thing. It has a color. Chartreuse is the color, and Kamala Harris has adopted that for whatever social media page that is. But I have brought some notes because I knew you would want a definition. Okay, here we go. Charlie XCX, who I do know, quote, brat. You're just that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe says some dumb things sometimes, end quote.
So is the idea that we're all kind of brat and Vice President Harris is brat? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if you're brat. I think you aspire to be brat.
Right.
Okay? You don't just become brat.
Oh, okay.
You have to try.
you can work at it.
I will aspire to be brat. I will aspire. But I mean, the point is that she is, whether it's her or some very clever people who work for her, going right for them in the language of their own.
Okay, if you're not cringing yet, I am so sorry, but you should be happy that I did not do what my producers who are Gen Z told me, which is this thing called the Apple dance. Apparently, I'm going to practice. I promised them I would practice, and maybe tomorrow. So Kamala is brat and Pelosi is brat also. Now let's move before we end the show to Crazy Town. Crazy Town is absolutely the utter meltdown from everyone, including the craziest of them all, Laura Loomer. Crazy and dangerous. But I want to share this with you because I have a tradition of laughing at the dangerous people, because that's how I feel joyful and I diminish their efforts. So this is absolutely nuts. She said this yesterday morning. She said at 10 a.m., this is Twitter, at 10 a.m. Eastern today, White House Chief of Staff Jeff Zients is holding a mandatory call from all White House staff, that should be 4, followed by a call for all political appointees in the Biden administration at 11 a.m. We may be getting close to a full-blown resignation from Joe Biden. His medical condition is now terminal, from what sources have told me. What? What sources? The sources in her brain? Is it Donald Trump standing next to her? Joe Biden is very much alive. The man has COVID. He called in after that to the press conference so we could hear him. And that is still not satisfying the people in Crazy Town. Too bad. They are at a loss. And the crazier they get and the more unhinged they get, as the doors fly off the hinges, as the doors, as the door frames fly off the houses, as their hair is on fire, I would say take a beat. Know that we've got this. Donate if you can, to the Harris campaign. Sign up to organize and let your friends know that you have her back. I feel better than I have felt in years. This feels a lot like the 2008 Barack Obama campaign. We are part of. This is not a moment. It's a movement, right? This is a movement. Or did I get it wrong? Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton. We are in something. As I said yesterday, I'm beginning to allow myself to feel that we are going to elect our first woman president of the United States of America. And join me in the joy, join me in the effort, join me in the fight, and join me in the belief that we can defeat Donald Trump. I know we can do it. You know we can do it. And I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow again at 8 a.m. for Morning Jen. And remember, we always have nerds Tuesday and Thursday, which is including today at noon. See you then.